Hey guys, my name is Andrew Henderson from nomadcapitalist.com and the author of this best-selling book on Amazon. In this video, I want to share with you how to get a second passport in a tax-friendly way. We're going to talk about specific countries as well as some macro strategies that I think you should be aware of if taxes are a concern for you, and that's one of your motivations for looking to get a second passport. Now, if you're watching this video, chances are you fall into one of two categories. Number one, you're like the people that I work with and help who are high income earners, have high wealth. You're looking to reduce the amount of tax you pay. You want more control over your assets, more freedom, more options. That's number one. Number two is you may not be quite there yet, but you plan on becoming wealthy and you want some kind of plan B for possible future events. You think it's just a good diversification strategy. But the last thing you'd want in having this benign diversification strategy is to add a tax problem into the mix. So I'm going to cover how to get a second passport and give yourself options when it comes to tax. Now, if you are new to the second passport concept, definitely subscribe to our channel. We've got a lot of other videos that I would encourage you to watch first to learn what second passports are all about and how to get them. But the way I really approach the idea of second citizenship with tax combined, there's a lot of things that go into this, but on a basic level, it's kind of like an XY graph. Over here, we've got the issues of time, and over here, we've got the issues of lifestyle. Specifically when it comes to time, what's the situation now? What's the situation going to be later? And when it comes to lifestyle, are you looking for a place to live or are you not looking to a place to live? This is important because this industry of people becoming dual nationals is so big and so vast. A US citizen who becomes St. Lucian by making an investment into that country is a lot less likely to live in St. Lucia and have to deal with St. Lucia tax than someone who is a Chinese citizen who gets a Maltese citizenship by investment and may well want to live in Malta or somewhere else in the EU to support their family and support their children and give them a better life, in their opinion. And so everyone's situation is different, but if we look at the value of time, what are the tax ramifications of your second passport now? There, generally speaking, aren't that many tax ramifications just by getting a passport if you're doing it by investment, if you're doing it by descent, if you're doing it by fast-track naturalization. Where the issues with taxes now come into play are if you actually need to live and be tax resident in a country in order to be granted citizenship, which would be many of the naturalization schemes, particularly in the developed world. For example, if you need to become a Canadian citizen, you have to go and live in Canada 9 months a year. That's going to make you tax resident. You're going to pay tax on your worldwide income. And then once you become a citizen, you're going to have to go through the whole process of becoming tax non-resident in order to prove to them why you shouldn't continue to pay taxes. If you're going to become a United States citizen, well, the US is the only country in the world that taxes your worldwide income no matter where you go. So that's not really a very good tax planning strategy, and a lot of our audience are US citizens looking to escape that. But there's one other wild card that is little discussed, and that is in Malta. There's a citizenship by investment program where the EU is constantly trying to get Malta to force the people who are getting its citizenship through investment to prove genuine links to the country. You're already required to spend time in Malta to become a citizen of the country, and the EU wants it to be more. Is that going to pose a tax issue? Is there going to be some kind of flat tax? Are they just going to keep it the way it is? Is there going to be some kind of exemption? I think that potentially in the future there could be a tax issue for people who want to become citizens of Malta by investment. Other than that, there aren't really a lot of tax issues now with the country that you are going to become a citizen of if you're doing it by investment or through any of the other ways we mentioned. So if you want to become a St. Lucian citizen, there's not really a de facto tax issue with that. It doesn't come with a set of tax circumstances. The issues that I think could come up with later are, I do see the potential, not the guarantee, but I see a potential for developed world countries in particular to impose more strict tax rules on their citizens. Potentially They could impose US-style citizenship-based taxation, although I think that's less likely. What I think may be more likely is that they're going to say, show us where you are paying tax. And if you're living a nomadic lifestyle, if you're living in a tax haven, if you're living a distributed lifestyle where you're really not liable to pay much anywhere, I think some of these developed countries might crack down and say, yeah, we don't like that. And I think that there may be in the future, with the way things are going, some kind of tax on citizens of certain countries, or at least some kind of obligation to be paying somewhere. And so that's something that has to be taken into consideration. No doubt some people will disagree with me on that, but I do see the trend as more transparency, more compliance, and movements away from the ability to just pay zero. And so for that reason, having a Maltese or a Cypriot or some kind of other European passport, as I've talked about before, potentially becomes a bit more desirable, or less desirable for me, if the issue is, I don't want to get into a complicated tax net. Now, let's talk about where you're going to live, because this is a big piece that confuses a lot of people. We have a video on our channel called The 3 Different Types of Taxation that people often get confused. And I'll give you an example of how this manifests itself in the citizenship business. Anytime you see someone who's selling passports, who's in the business of investment immigration, that's their business. You'll see them saying, get a Grenada passport, get a St. Kitts and Nevis passport. There's no tax obligations. And that's true if you don't live there. Now, the question to ask yourself is, if I'm getting a second passport, is it because I want to live there? For many people, the answer is no. I just want the best passport that is affordable, that gives me a good return on investment, that is not unduly burdensome on me. Maybe I don't want to spend a lot of time there. A lot of people, and particularly Westerners like myself, we're looking for a passport as a backup plan, as a way to achieve our financial goals, as a way to increase our mobility, as a way to grow our quality of life. And we don't particularly want to live in those countries. What I'll often tell people is, get the best passport that you can at the lowest price point, and then if you want to live in a particular place, get a residence permit there. A St. Lucia passport with a European Union residence is going to cost you a lot less in sunk costs and still less in just total invested money than it would to go and buy a Maltese passport, for example. The benefit, essentially, for many people I talk to and work with is the same. You get to live in Europe without the perpetual nonsense if you ever want to leave, and you have a citizenship that gives you decent visa-free travel. Do you want to live in the country where you are a citizen of? I think for most people the answer is no, but if you do, then you have to start doing tax planning, because pretty much every country out there says if you live in our country, we're going to tax you. There are some exceptions. There are the territorial tax countries. Most of those countries don't offer citizenship that easily, at least without living there for a while, or at least without having a lot of money. And so if you go to live in St. Lucia, if you go to live in Grenada, if you go to live in Antigua, if you go to live in most of these citizenship by investment countries, if you go to live in most countries that have fast-track naturalization, you are going to end up paying tax in that country on your worldwide income if you're living there full-time. Now again, there are exceptions. There are programs that you can get where you can go and live in that country and not pay tax. In the citizenship by investment world, those 2 programs are most namely St. Kitts and Nevis and Vanuatu. Vanuatu has kind of a weird citizenship program. St. Kitts and Nevis is the oldest program in the business, but these countries have 0 income tax. So if you go and live there, even if it's full-time, you're not going to pay tax on money you make in that country or money you make overseas. But that's an important consideration. Now, if you want to be a European citizen so that you can live in Europe, there may be a strategy by living in different places to reduce your tax or possibly eliminate your tax. I think that just living in Europe full-time in the EU is going to become more and more difficult to pay 0, but there is a way to potentially do that. But you have to understand, if you're getting that Maltese or that Cypriot passport with the goal of living in Europe, that may come with some tax consequences. It may come with some rather high tax consequences, and at the very least, it's going to require some tax planning. Now again, most people don't want to move to Grenada. They're just getting the passport because you get good visa-free travel. You can go to Russia, you can go to China. There's a lot of benefits from it. But if you think, hey, you know what? I may want to move to the country I'm a citizen of one day. It may be worth paying a little bit more than the lowest price options to become a citizen of St. Kitts. Because if you're a citizen of St. Kitts, then you can live there tax-free. Will that last forever? There are, of course, no guarantees, but we can only go based on what we know now. So really, the most important question in kind of tax planning with citizenship is, where do I want to be physically, and where do I think the world is going in the next 5 or 10 years? We can only speculate on where the world is going in the next 5 to 10 years, but what I found is most people who are Westerners don't really need the extra expense of becoming a European citizen unless they have a parent or a grandparent from there. If it's free, okay, fantastic. If you're going to go out and invest $1 million into something to get a passport, with the potential that there could be more tax ramifications down the road, it's probably a lot easier to go out and spend $100,000, find a way to live in Europe by buying some property, and know what you'll ever do if Europe goes crazy. But those are the important questions that you have to ask. If the goal is, I want to make sure, based on today's tax rates, I always have a place to go, and they can't deny me, I'm a citizen of the country, then St. Kitts and Nevis, $150,000, Vanuatu, somewhere in the $200,000 range. It's kind of confusing. They're always changing it. Those may be the options for you. Now, there's a wild card option, which is to be a citizen of another CARICOM country, a Caribbean community country, where you are, for example, a citizen of one of the other Caribbean countries, and you are a skilled worker, and you have freedom of movement then to go and live in St. Kitts. That becomes a bit more dicey, and I think that some people who are just entrepreneurs may not qualify as skilled workers, so it's probably better just to secure your spot in St. Kitts and Nevis if you really want that tax-free connection. But as always, the devil is in the details when it comes to taxes and when it comes to second citizenship. The reality is there is a way to become a citizen of one country and not pay them anything, and then go and live in another country or set of countries where you pay their prevailing rates, which could be zero, could be low, or it could be high. Certainly, you get to make the choice throughout your life, and even though right now, a lot of people who are, for example, US citizens who have St. Lucia or Dominica passports live a tax-free life, at least they always have the option to go and live in the UK or to go and live in Canada if they want in the future, and their citizenship won't be the issue that affects that. Now, if you want to learn more about second passports, as I said, definitely check out our entire channel here on YouTube. Make sure you click the subscribe button because we've got a lot of videos both on international tax as well as citizenship planning. And if you've been following this for a while and you're just trying to figure out, how to put your own personal strategy into place and get your passport, get your tax savings, get it done with, then I definitely recommend that you head on over to nomadcapitalist.com and get some of our more advanced strategies for yourself.